The US economy is doing great by all traditional measures. So why is everybody so mad?
How are people affording life right now?
We're not.
Now we end the week off with $27 to go the rest of the week.
We can't afford milk. We can't afford eggs. We can't afford our rent.
Like, really mad.
Can somebody explain to me in crayon eating terms why I make over 3 times the federal minimum wage and I cannot afford to live?
I'm near Kaissar. I like to look at the math behind my biggest questions, and hopefully yours too. A lot of people, like economists, political strategists, your favorite nightly newscaster, are trying to explain the disconnect, but they're missing something very big. I'm sure you've seen the headlines. Inflation is falling, unemployment is low, the economy is growing, and yet the vibes are off in America right now.
I got a bad vibe.
About as off as they were during the 2008 financial crisis,
I've been effectively unemployed for over a year.
and during the painful recession coupled with high inflation during the late 1970s and early 1980s.
If my cash flow were to stop right now, not only would I be out of business, but I would undoubtedly lose all this, and then I would owe maybe $250,000.
Consumer sentiment has bounced back recently, but it's still a lot closer to the low sentiment levels recorded during previous busts. Some economists are blaming heightened political divisions for putting Americans in a bad mood. Others blame the media's tendency to focus on bad news more than good. And still others point to a growing number of conflicts around the world. Those are all factors, but if you look at the data, this problem did not happen overnight. We just haven't been paying attention. The best example of this is admittedly wonky, but that's what we do here. It's the relationship between productivity growth and wage growth. The idea is that as the economy becomes more productive, businesses are able to produce more with the same or fewer resources, which makes them more money. In a healthy economy, those gains are shared by business owners and workers. This should be obvious. Owners get more valuable businesses, and workers get higher wages, and everybody's better off. In fact, from 1948 to about 1980, that's exactly what happened. Wages grew in line with productivity gains. But since then, productivity has soared while wages have barely budged, signaling that most of those gains have gone to business owners. That glaring economic inequality we see all around us, it's been 50 years in the making and counting. And since this is do the math, let me share some data that shows it. Over 80% of GDP is generated by the private sector, and public companies contribute a sizable chunk of it. We have good data on public companies back to the early 90s, and what it shows is that profit margins have soared over the past 3 decades. In 1993, margins for US public companies as a group were about 4%. By 2021, they had tripled to 12%, and Wall Street analysts expect them to climb higher next year. By themselves, higher profits are great.
You know how I love money.
We should want US companies to become more productive and profitable, not least because about 60% of US households own stocks. And the more profitable companies become, the more these US households make. But higher profits shouldn't come at the expense of squeezing workers. How badly workers are getting squeezed is hard to know exactly because, amazingly, companies aren't required to disclose how much they pay workers.
That doesn't seem right.
But what we do know does not paint a pretty picture. In fact, it suggests that tens of millions of Americans work full-time and can't afford basic necessities. Here's the math. Let's start with how much Americans need to get by. There's surprising agreement on that. According to a Gallup poll last year, respondents on average estimated that a family of 4 needs at least $85,000 a year to pay for basic necessities. Keep in mind that this is just to cover the basics: housing, food, transportation, healthcare, taxes, and childcare if both parents work. It doesn't include entertainment or vacations or saving for college or retirement. According to the Economic Policy Institute, for example, a family of 4 needs about $97,000 a year to get by in a mid-sized city like Nashville, Tennessee. MIT pegs that number at $86,000 if one parent is working, and closer to $107,000 if 2 parents are working. Now comes the harder question. Based on those numbers, how many full-time workers make enough money to support a family of 4? The reason that's difficult to answer is that the government reports limited wage data, so we can only approximate how many American workers fall short. But even the estimate is pretty jarring. There are about 109 million full-time US workers ages 25 and over. and their median pay is $1,190 a week. Assuming 52 weeks a year, that translates into an income of $62,000 a year, meaning that half of workers make less than that. Using the same math and available data, we also know the annual income at the 75th percentile is about $98,000, meaning that 3/4 of workers make less than that. If we then draw a straight line between the median and 75th percentile income, and we assume that a family of 4 needs $86,000 a year just to cover necessities, which is the lower of MIT and EPI's estimate, we can approximate that 67% of those 109 million full-time workers would not be able to raise a family of 4 with one adult working.
What is happening to the world?
And the numbers aren't much better if 2 parents are working. If a family of 4 with 2 working adults needs $107,000 of combined income a year, as MIT estimates, 39% of full-time workers would fall short of that mark, which is more than 42 million workers. It's no wonder so many Americans are unhappy with the economy. So how do we fix this? A good start would be to require public companies to disclose how much they pay workers. It would make a huge difference. It would allow investors to evaluate which companies are investing in their workforce and which ones are neglecting them. It would give workers and private businesses a benchmark to evaluate their own wages. And maybe most important of all, it would give us the information we need to know exactly how many workers need more help. We can keep scratching our heads, or we can look at the numbers staring us in the face and finally accept that broad economic numbers no longer reflect the experience of tens of millions of working Americans.